Hey man, you know how you like to get all creative to solve problems with your mini painting?
I don't have any idea where you're going with this, Daryl, but I'm sure it's going to be terrible.
Alright, just hear me out. I think I found a way to solve the world's hunger problem.
What?
Let me introduce you to Kitty Pot Pie.
No. When you boil it down, just about every product we use in our hobby, whether it was intended for miniature painting or not, is pulled in because of one key reason: efficiency. Think about it. Better paintbrushes allow you to more accurately paint tiny details like dotting I's and long, thin lines. Better paints allow you to get better coverage and apply a wider variety of painting techniques. And specialty products like miniature drills allow for faster and more precise drilling of your gun barrels. And the list goes on. But no matter which tools I've bought and tried, there's always one area of efficiency that's eluded me, and that is color selection. If you're anything like me, you do one of two things when deciding which paint in your collection to use on a given model. You either A, painstakingly overthink what would be the perfect tan, brown, gray, or whatever paint each detail of the model should be, so half of your time at the painting desk isn't even spent painting. Or B, you just grab whatever you can, not putting much thought into what will make the finished model look better based on a cohesive color scheme. Now, I must have been talking or typing about this with my friends lately because my phone has started to recommend weird interior decorating color scheme products for me. Damn you, algorithm. And they got me with their stupid targeting advertising because these color cubes showed up on my feed and they look amazing. They seem like they could solve a lot of issues for me in coming up with good, unique color schemes for my miniatures. And the timing of these arriving at my doorstep is fortuitous because I've been wanting to paint one of these sexy new barbarians from the Dark Oath set. And every time I look at their options, I just see a bunch of tans and browns and grays that I'd like to paint them in. And I know that's not going to look great and stand out at the table, so maybe the color cubes can solve this issue. And I know what some of you are thinking.
John, Ultramarines,
or insert your faction here,
are blue,
or insert your faction's official color here.
so I don't need to choose colors.
Blue might be the main color of your faction, but have you thought about all the other supporting colors that you'll end up putting on your model and its base? And how will each of those colors work for you or against you in having your model look better than the sum of its parts? At least that's my working theory. I guess by the time we're done applying this to one of those, we'll figure out whether it's true or not. Oh, and while I do have affiliate links down in the video description where you can pick up your hobby gear just like I do at an even bigger discount, I have no affiliation whatsoever with color cubes. So if these end up being completely stupid and nobody buys them, I do not care. After pulling out a bunch of different cards that seemed to speak to me and I think would look well on painting my Dark Oath, I settled on card 249. The reason this one really stood out is that it has some great warm earthy tones that I always love to paint in, and then there's this wonderful bluish gray and a charcoal color that will give us some really cold contrast. Also, I wasn't thinking of a blue at all when looking at painting these Dark Oath, but by flipping through these cards, I was able to look through the lens of these really interesting color schemes and open my eyes to other possibilities. Something else unpredictable happened, and that was just general inspiration. I saw really cool color schemes that I didn't have any intention of using on this Dark Oath, but it made me want to go back to my pile of shame in the closet and find a cool mini that would fit an interesting color scheme. Now that I've got my cards selected, I did my best to find color matches based on the paints in my collections. And quite frankly, I spent way more time on this than I should have to find a perfect match. And I don't think you need to. I think if it's pretty close, it'll work just great. Also, on the back of each of these cards, they have the official color number and some variation shades of each color, so you have some wiggle room in which version of each color you want to use on your miniature. Now, as I usually do, I started by painting the skin on this miniature, and it's important to note that you don't have to pick a color card that has a skin tone on it if you want to paint flesh on your miniature. Think of that as a neutral, an added color for whatever color skin you want to paint. But because my color scheme had this interesting ochre and a dark rusty red color, I decided to use those and a mixture of those as a base for my skin tone. I also don't think you need to worry about mixing together any of the colors in your scheme throughout your paint job, but because this scheme already includes 5 colors, I'm going to try to keep the variables to a minimum to see how powerful this scheme is by not adding very many additional colors. Also, if you start with one of these color cards, but then find yourself needing to add 8, 10, 12 additional colors to this in order to finish painting the model, you've kind of undermined the whole point of adding efficiency through a color card. As I'm painting the flesh, I'm realizing that this almost mustard colored skin is not something I've done before, which makes me feel like this is a positive experiment already because I'm trying new things. I find it's really easy to get stuck in a rut when it comes to color selection. The colors we know and we trust, we always tend to lean on, and because of that, we're not opening ourselves to learning new things or finding new favorite colors. I'm finding that exact thing with this skin. The initial layers didn't give me a ton of confidence, but as I brought in more red to really saturate the shadows and then built up over the extremely warm ochre base layers, the skin seems to feel super lively, and with just an addition of a bright warm flesh tone as a highlight, they really pop on the model. Once I've got the skin about 80% complete, I decided I'm going to go back and base coat each of the individual surfaces just so I can get a feel for how this color scheme is going to work before I finish the detail on any particular surface. So I just went around and base coated everything on the model except the metallics. By doing it this way, I'm able to space out the colors on the model as well as be sure to place darker colors next to light ones so we create distinct areas of separation. This will always make the model easier to read in your hand as well as on the tabletop. I found myself mixing in a bit of the charcoal color to whatever the base color was supposed to be in the shadowy areas just to build up some color depth from the get-go. I just followed the zenithal highlight in any of the areas of that surface that were darker with that black primer showing underneath. I added a little bit of this darker color. Well, spring is here, and if you're anything like me, that means trying to get more exercise and eat better. And we all know that ultra-processed food is terrible for us, and the same is true for our dogs. And that's where today's sponsor, the Farmer's Dog, comes in. The Farmer's Dog makes real, fresh, healthy food, made from whole meat and veggies. It's gently cooked in human-grade kitchens to preserve the food's nutritional value. When you sign up, you provide information about your dog, like their age, weight, body condition, activity level, and more. That way your dog gets the portion that's just right for them, whether they're a teacup Chihuahua or a large breed like Argus here. Fresh food plans from the Farmer's Dog are precisely proportioned for each dog's needs, making weight management easier. Maintaining a healthy weight is a proven longevity booster. Lean dogs can live up to 2.5 years longer. It's never too late to start your dog on a fresh, healthy diet. The Farmer's Dog will be there with you to make that worthwhile change. And if you use a special Ninjon viewer link down in the video description, you'll get 50% off and free shipping on your first box of healthy, fresh food. A big thanks to the Farmer's Dog for sponsoring today's video. If your color scheme doesn't have an obvious shadow color like this charcoal, you can just add a bit of black or get creative by adding some black to one of the brighter colors of your scheme and using that as your shadow. Now, because I'm using the deep red color as part of the skin tone, it's already got some representation on the mini, so I'm not going to use a ton of that across other areas. It's a strong color, and I don't want it to overpower the more relaxed tones that make up the rest of the scheme. I'll just keep it for small pops of color in select areas. already really happy with the direction this is going, especially how well that gray blue on the loincloth is working with the other colors. And because I'm digging this blue, I thought it would only be fitting to use in the Final Fantasy-esque weird hairstyle that this dude is sporting. I don't want the hair to be the exact same color as the loincloth, that would be too samey same. I'm gonna make it much lighter, almost like a cool off-white, by mixing in my favorite ivory paint with the initial darkest color, and then add more ivory to the mix as I build up the base tone and the highlights. Again, this is not at all how I would have painted this figure if you would have asked me to do it last week, and I kinda love that feeling. Color selection and preference is a bit of what defines our style as painters, but how do you discover what colors really speak to you as you're trying to develop your own style? For me, a lot of the colors that I've grown to love are based on colors that painters I look up to use a lot. And yes, I have folded in more colors that I really enjoy using time and again to my regular painting rotation, but I've struggled to find a way to keep trying out new colors in interesting ways to see how they work best. The idea of becoming more well-rounded in color use and folding in new favorite colors seems really exciting, and I know this dark blue-gray is something that I'm going to be using a lot more in the future. Once I get all the base colors established and I have a few highlights by just adding a bit of ivory to each color, I'll turn my attention to the metallics. I'm going to start with a dark silver because I don't want to overpower our color schemes with a vibrant shiny silver, and I'll use a copper because it should play well with the warm colors in the scheme. Now I'm really digging the color of this copper, but holy shit, is it vibrant? I need to pull it all back together along with the silvers with a black wash over the entire surface. I've been trying to test out each of the different Army Painter speed paint metallics, and this is the first time I've used their brazen copper. Yeah, good paint. I want to keep this paint job pretty clean and crisp as a whole so we can get a good feel for how the color cube really works, but I can't help myself when it comes to putting just a little bit of spice on these metallics. Doombull Brown is always my go-to deeper rust color that won't be too vibrant in comparison to the rest of the model, and turquoise is always really good over copper to give you that natural oxidation effect. For both of these, I'm thinning the paint down to a heavy wash consistency. It's still thick enough that it's going to deposit enough pigments to leave an impact in just one coat, but it's also really important that we don't lose control over this paint. So we need to wick off our brush on a paper towel before we ever touch the mini. The final step for our metallics is to bring out a bright, shiny silver and just edge highlight and dot a few select areas where you really want that shine to come back through. For the copper, you can use that same base color over the top and it'll achieve the same effect because it's so bright and punchy right on its own. I decided I wanted one more section of this burnt red accent color, so I decided to freehand a little design with spikes on it on the shield towel that this guy has. Still trying to figure out the tactical advantage of a shield towel. I'm sure it's obvious and I'm just not thinking of it. I want to keep the base pretty subdued, so I just slap a coat of Wildwood contrast paint over the entire thing, and then I build back up the details of the stones using the charcoal and the tan color from the color scheme to build them back up to a grayish color. And I'll use an olive color for the grass on the bases just to give them a realistic tone without overpowering too much from the main color scheme on the model. Now, I'm guessing it probably won't come as a big surprise to you at this point that I really enjoyed this process and I thought that the color cube was actually quite valuable. Like, when I look at this model, it doesn't look like a model I painted. This is just not the color choices I would have made. Quite frankly, this color scheme looks better than what I was thinking of when I was deciding colors for painting a Dark Oath model in my head. But what do you think? Does this color scheme work? Do you think the color cube brought value to the paint job? Now, I'm guessing that there are some good free online resources out there that'll help you with color schemes, and I kind of like tangible things, but as long as you're finding ways to get inspiration and adding new color variation to your painting, and most importantly, adding efficiency to your painting process, I think it's a worthwhile tool to add to your painting tool belt. Thanks for hanging out today. This honestly was a really fun video to make and fun model to paint. And I hope that you enjoyed it as well. If you did and you want to support me in making more videos, make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. You can also check out those affiliate links that are down there where you can get extra discounts on hobby goodies so your hobby dollar is stretched further. And if you want to support me even more, you can check out my Patreon down in the links as well. A big thank you to my patrons. We have a lot of fun over there. We got some nice, cool rewards you get for supporting me and making sure we get to keep these videos rolling. And speaking of videos rolling, I'll be back before you know it with another new video. And sometime between now and then, make sure you find time in your day to slay the gray.
Get in there. Get in the dish. Get in that little dish, kitty. From the kitchen of Chef Boyardero, I introduce to you Kitty Pie Pie. Kitty tail mustache right there. Pretty good one. I guess you're a pretty good kitty.